Hello and welcome to the TechHub.training challenge solution video for widget wizards. We'll go ahead and dive in. First thing we're going to want to look at here is what we're doing, which is finding which of the suppliers will be our best option based on the cost factors. So we're going to divide it up into three different costs: carrying costs, order costs, and unit costs, and then find total cost and determine which one will be our best option. First thing we're going to need to calculate is going to be reorder point. You can see here that that's just going to be equal to the safety stock that we're going to keep. That's down here. And then you're going to add to that the lead time in days of each order that you make times the daily demand. And that's just to ensure that when you do order it, by the time it gets to your company, it will be your stock at your company won't be less than what you want your safety stock to be, which is 200 in this case. So that's how we determine the reorder point. So we know that for this one, we'll want to reorder when our stock reaches the level of 400, 340, etc. Economic order quantity is just determining what the correct amount to place in each order will be based on a couple different factors. And that's just going to be the square root of 2 times the annual demand that we're seeing for the product times the cost per order, so the cost that the supplier charges us to place any order, one order, and then you'll divide that by the annual carrying cost for each unit of inventory that you have to keep on hand, right? And then you'll find the square root of all of that, and that'll determine how much you should order with each order that you place, right? The next thing we're going to want to figure out is the order amount. What we're going to do there is we want to take the economic order quantity, right? And we want to order that much. However, a lot of suppliers will have things like maximum orders or minimum orders. So the whole point of this is just to make sure that hopefully we can order the economic order quantity. If the economic order quantity is going to be below the minimum order, we're going to instead have to do the minimum order. If the economic order quantity is above the maximum order, then we're going to have to do the maximum order instead, right? So it's kind of a, we want to take the economic order quantity, but we have to take into consideration the parameters that the supplier sets. So that's all that's doing right there. Next, we're going to want to find the average stock that we're keeping on hand throughout the year. The way you're going to do this is just going to take the average of the maximum stock you have on hand and the minimum stock you have on hand. So the minimum stock you have on hand is really just going to be your reorder point, which is, however much you have on hand when you decide to reorder is going to be 400. And then you subtract the lead time in days times the daily demand, right, plus the lead time in days plus the daily demand, right? And that's going to be your minimum amount of stock that you'll ever have on hand. And then you add to that the maximum amount, which is just going to be that same thing plus the order amount that you're ordering, because the most amount of stock you'll ever have on hand is right when you get a new delivery in, right? So that just takes that into consideration. So you add those two numbers together and then you divide them by 2 to get the average. That's your average stock that you have on hand throughout the year. Great. And then the next thing we're going to want to figure out is how many orders we're going to make throughout the year. And the way to do that is just take the order amount that we're ordering, right, which we determined a little bit ago. We calculated that, and we're just going to divide our annual demand by the order amount, right, which is going to be however many orders we're going to actually make throughout the year. In this case, it's 36. I did a round up function here, and that's just important because, you can't make a fraction of an order. So we want to assume that we're going to make, more, if we have 35.6, we want to make 36 orders actually, so we'll be able to meet demand. We don't want to not meet demand. The next thing we'll determine is just units ordered, which is going to be your order amount times the orders made that we just determined, right? And that's pretty simple calculation. Next, we just want to calculate all our costs. So we'll start with carrying cost. You'll just take the annual carrying cost of 1 unit of stock that you have times the average amount of units that you have in stock. Pretty simple. And we calculated average stock earlier. So this calculation is pretty simple as well. Next calculation is going to be total order cost, and that's just going to be your orders made, which is 36, we calculated that earlier, times the cost per order, right? Again, these cost calculations will be pretty simple. We did a lot of the hard math earlier. And then total unit cost is just going to be the cost per unit, the supplier is going to sell them to us, in this case at $25 per unit, and however many units we actually order, which is 7,200. You might be tempted to use the annual demand number down here, but you want to use the units order column that we determined, because again, we're using some rounding functions here, because some of these can't be fractional numbers, so we're rounding them. And so units ordered is going to be a little bit different than actual demand. For example, right here, 7,260 is higher than annual demand because we'd rather order a little bit above annual demand than below annual demand. So that's what happens with the rounding functions there, is we end up ordering a little bit more than annual demand, which is normal, and that happens in the course of business. So just be careful when you're doing that to use units ordered column and not just the annual demand column. Finally, total cost, you'll just go ahead and sum those all up. It's pretty easy. You've got your total cost column. The next thing you're going to want to do is find your lowest cost supplier. So the way you do that is you're going to use an X lookup. The X lookup is going to take 3 arguments, your lookup value, and the lookup value you want to look for is the minimum, the smallest number in the total cost column. So you just take minimum function and you pass it the total cost column. Pretty easy. So that's your lookup value. So it finds the smallest one. In this case, the smallest one looks like it's going to be 306,822. So it says, okay, 306,000 is our smallest value. And then you go ahead and look for that same value again in the total cost column, right, in the lookup array. And then the return array is going to be the names of all the companies. So what this will do is it'll take the minimum number in this column and say, okay, look for this minimum number, 306,000, and look for it in this column of total costs. And then match it, go all the way across, and find the name of the company, in this case, Mary Widgets Corp. So there you go. There's a solution. Great thing about this spreadsheet that you've made is that it's very scalable. You can pass a lot of different information to it, and you can edit it a little bit depending on the information you're using, right? You're not always going to have exactly all of these information pieces. So you can change it based on that, and you can add a whole bunch more suppliers if you want. It'll always work. It'll always give you the best, lowest cost supplier. So thanks for watching, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.